In 2002, the bustling city of San Francisco, California, became the grim backdrop for a chilling and heartbreaking crime. Evelyn Hernandez, a 24-year-old immigrant from El Salvador, along with her 5-year-old son Alex, vanished under suspicious circumstances. Months later, Evelyn's dismembered body surfaced in the San Francisco Bay. This harrowing tale of betrayal and brutality shook the community to its core. San Francisco in 2002 was a city bustling with life, its streets filled with the hum of commuters, the aroma of fresh coffee wafting from corner cafes, and the distant sound of seagulls echoing from the bay. Amid the chaos of urban life, Evelyn Hernandez carved out a quiet existence with her 5-year-old son Alex. To the outside world, she was a picture of resilience, a 24-year-old single mother who had immigrated from El Salvador, working tirelessly to provide a stable future for her child. But behind her warm smile and unwavering determination lay a woman carrying the weight of secrets. Evelyn's life was far from simple. She was 7 months pregnant with her second child, Fernando, and navigating a precarious relationship with Adam Torres, a man she had met through mutual acquaintances. Adam, a married father with a well-paying job, had promised support but seemed increasingly distant as her pregnancy progressed. "Mommy, will the baby sleep in my room?" Alex's voice chirped one morning as Evelyn prepared breakfast. She paused, placing a gentle hand on her growing belly. "Yes, sweetheart. He'll be your little brother. You'll be his hero." Despite the tenderness of moments like these, Evelyn's thoughts were clouded with doubt. She had tried to discuss her future with Adam, but their conversations always ended in frustration. He had grown cold and evasive, and Evelyn could sense the distance between them widening. On the first day of May, Evelyn woke early. She had errands to run and planned to attend Alex's kindergarten celebration later that afternoon. The morning unfolded like any other. Breakfast, a quick check of the grocery list, and a loving goodbye as she dropped Alex off at school. By all accounts, she appeared calm and focused, a mother with a full day ahead. Yet as the hours ticked by, Evelyn's phone grew eerily silent. She missed the kindergarten event. She didn't pick up Alex after school. Her friends called repeatedly, their concern mounting with each unanswered ring. By evening, her absence was impossible to ignore. Evelyn wasn't someone who disappeared without a word. "Something's wrong," her sister whispered to their mother that night. She would never leave Alex waiting. The following day, Evelyn's family filed a missing persons report. The police began their inquiry, but there was little to go on. No signs of forced entry at her home, no calls or messages hinting at trouble. It was as if she and Alex had vanished into thin air. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn's face appeared on missing posters across the city, her soft smile frozen in a photograph that now symbolized heartbreak. "A devoted mother," the headlines read, "a family desperate for answers." In the quiet moments, Evelyn's mother clung to hope. "She's out there," she told herself. "She has to be." Yet in the shadows, questions loomed. Why had Evelyn been so secretive in the weeks leading up to her disappearance? Who had she met that day? And most haunting of all, what had happened to Alex? The hours following Evelyn Hernandez's disappearance turned into an agonizing waiting game for her family. The air in their small San Francisco apartment was thick with worry as her mother paced the floor, clutching a photograph of Evelyn and Alex. Calls to Evelyn's phone went unanswered, and the more time passed, the more the family's worst fears began to take shape. "Why isn't she answering?" Evelyn's sister whispered, her voice quivering. "She wouldn't just leave, not Alex, not the baby." By the second day, the family reported her missing to the San Francisco Police Department. Officers arrived to collect initial statements, asking questions that Evelyn's family found impossible to answer. Had she mentioned feeling threatened? Was there someone she was planning to meet? The truth was, Evelyn hadn't shared much in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Her growing silence, once dismissed as stress from her pregnancy, now seemed ominous. Posters with Evelyn and Alex's smiling faces began appearing across the Mission District. They hung in windows, on telephone poles, and outside grocery stores, each one a plea for information. The community responded quickly, spreading the word and organizing searches. Friends and neighbors gathered in groups, combing through parks, alleyways, and neighborhoods, calling out their names. "She loved Alex so much," one neighbor told a reporter. "There's no way she'd leave him behind or put him in danger. Something's not right." At the heart of the investigation was Evelyn's strained relationship with Adam Torres. When detectives questioned him, Adam appeared calm, almost indifferent. He claimed he hadn't seen Evelyn on the day she disappeared and insisted he had no idea where she could be. His alibi, however, was vague at best. "I was at work," he stated, avoiding eye contact. "We weren't on good terms recently. She didn't want to talk to me." Yet Evelyn's closest friends painted a different picture. They described heated arguments between the two, with Adam pressuring Evelyn to terminate her pregnancy. "She told me she felt trapped," one friend confessed, "but she wanted to keep the baby. She said it was her second chance." The more investigators learned, the more unsettling the story became. Calls between Evelyn and Adam revealed a pattern of manipulation and coercion. Text messages recovered from Evelyn's phone showed a trail of pleading and apologies. "Please, just talk to me," one message from Adam read. Another was more ominous. "You're making this harder than it has to be." Meanwhile, as the days stretched into weeks, the community's hope began to dwindle. Candlelight vigils were held in front of Evelyn's apartment building, where neighbors shared memories of her kindness and devotion to her son. "She was always smiling," one attendee said, tears streaming down her face. "She didn't deserve this. No one does." Despite the public outcry, leads were scarce. Detectives combed through hours of surveillance footage, interviewed dozens of people, and tracked Evelyn's financial activity, but nothing pointed definitively to her whereabouts or Alex's. The lack of evidence was maddening, leaving Evelyn's family in a painful limbo. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A neighbor who had been away during the initial search came forward with a chilling account. "I remember seeing her," the neighbor said, her voice shaking. "It was the night before she disappeared. She was outside, arguing with a man. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now, I'm sure it was him." When shown a photo of Adam Torres, the neighbor nodded. "That's him. He was yelling and she looked scared." This revelation reignited the investigation, putting Adam squarely in the spotlight. Detectives revisited his alibi, scrutinizing every detail. As cracks began to form in his story, so did suspicions. But for Evelyn's family, the neighbor's testimony only deepened their anguish. "She was in trouble," Evelyn's mother murmured, her voice breaking, "and we weren't there to save her." The search for Evelyn and Alex intensified, with officers expanding their radius and bringing in cadaver dogs. Yet with every passing day, the possibility of finding them alive seemed to slip further from reach. The community that had rallied so passionately now faced the grim reality. The answers they sought might not bring the relief they hoped for. In the shadow of uncertainty, one question loomed above all else. What had happened to Evelyn and Alex that fateful day? It was a hot July morning, the kind that made San Francisco's famous fog seem like a distant memory. The stillness of the day was shattered when a passerby along the San Francisco Bay spotted something drifting in the water. At first, it looked like debris, perhaps a tangle of seaweed or discarded fabric. But as the current carried it closer, a chilling realization dawned. This was no ordinary object. It was human. The police were called immediately, and a small team arrived within the hour. Officers cordoned off the area while divers carefully retrieved the remains. What they pulled from the murky depths was both horrifying and heartbreaking. A dismembered torso, still clad in maternity clothing. The body's condition made identification difficult, but investigators feared the worst. Could this be Evelyn Hernandez? Back at the precinct, the discovery sent shockwaves through the department. The detectives working Evelyn's case, already frustrated by weeks of dead ends, now had a devastating piece of evidence. Forensic experts began their work, meticulously examining the remains. Evelyn's family was notified, their fragile hope crumbling under the weight of this grim news. "It's her, isn't it?" Evelyn's sister whispered through tears when she arrived at the station. The detectives couldn't confirm it yet, but their silence spoke volumes. DNA testing provided the answer days later. The torso was indeed Evelyn's. The confirmation was a gut punch to everyone who had clung to the possibility of finding her alive. But one question remained: where was Alex? The discovery of Evelyn's body raised more questions than it answered. Why had she been dismembered? Where were the missing parts of her body? And most hauntingly, what had happened to her unborn child? The case had taken a gruesome turn, and the pressure to find answers mounted with every passing moment. In the days that followed, the police intensified their focus on Adam Torres. His calm demeanor during previous interviews now seemed less like composure and more like detachment. Investigators revisited his alibi and found inconsistencies. Surveillance footage from the day Evelyn disappeared revealed Adam's car near her apartment, contradicting his earlier claims. A breakthrough came when divers returned to the bay to search for more evidence. They found fragments of fabric resembling Evelyn's maternity dress and what appeared to be a piece of duct tape. These items suggested a deliberate attempt to conceal the crime. Detectives suspected Evelyn's body had been weighed down, intended to stay submerged indefinitely, but something had gone wrong, and the tide had exposed the truth. Adam's name was now inseparable from the case. Detectives confronted him with their findings, but he continued to deny any involvement. "I don't know what happened to her," he insisted, his voice steady but his eyes betraying unease. "I wasn't there." As the investigation progressed, Evelyn's family struggled to process the horrifying details. Her mother, already overwhelmed by grief, found herself plagued by guilt. "I should have known," she said during a vigil held near the bay. "She was in trouble and I didn't see it." The community, too, felt the weight of Evelyn's story. The once hopeful search parties turned into somber gatherings as neighbors lit candles and prayed for justice. Local news outlets covered the case extensively, their headlines reflecting the growing outrage, "A mother's final sacrifice," and "Where is Alex Hernandez?" Despite the mounting evidence against Adam, the case was far from resolved. Alex was still missing, and without his testimony, or his remains, there was a gap in the narrative. What had he seen? What had he endured in his final moments? These unanswered questions hung heavy in the air, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had consumed Evelyn's life. As the chapter closed, one thing was clear. The investigation was entering its most critical phase. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to align, but the full picture remained just out of reach. And with every new revelation, the urgency to uncover the truth grew stronger. The revelation of Evelyn's remains in the San Francisco Bay had sent shockwaves through her family, community, and the investigators handling her case. But it was clear to everyone involved. This was just the beginning. Forensic evidence pointed toward foul play, and with each new discovery, suspicion around Adam Torres continued to deepen. Evelyn's past, once a source of mystery, now became the focal point of the investigation. Detectives dug into Evelyn's life, interviewing friends, colleagues, and anyone who might hold a piece of the puzzle. A consistent theme emerged. Evelyn's life in the weeks leading up to her disappearance had been increasingly complicated. Friends described her as anxious, withdrawn, and unusually secretive about her plans. "She wasn't herself," said Vanessa Ramirez, one of Evelyn's closest friends. "She'd always been open with me, but lately she seemed guarded, like she was hiding something." Vanessa revealed that Evelyn had confided in her about Adam Torres and the struggles in their relationship. Evelyn had been torn. She wanted to protect her unborn child, Fernando, but Adam's reaction to the pregnancy had been anything but supportive. "He told her to get rid of it," Vanessa said, her voice trembling. "She was devastated. She wanted that baby so badly." Further investigation into Adam's behavior revealed a pattern of manipulation and control. Text messages between him and Evelyn painted a chilling picture of a man desperate to maintain his double life. In one exchange, Adam wrote, "You're putting everything at risk. Stop being selfish." Another message read, "I'll fix this, but you need to listen to me." Detectives also uncovered that Adam had visited Evelyn's apartment multiple times in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Despite claiming during his initial interview that their contact had been minimal, surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed Adam's car parked near Evelyn's building on the evening before she vanished. "We're dealing with someone who wanted this to go away quietly," Detective Mark Benson explained in a press conference, "but the evidence suggests careful planning and a deliberate attempt to cover his tracks." Amid the mounting evidence, a new witness came forward, a co-worker of Adam's who had overheard a disturbing conversation just days before Evelyn disappeared. According to the co-worker, Adam had expressed frustration about a situation that was spiraling out of control. When pressed for details, Adam reportedly said, "I'll take care of it, one way or another." This statement added a sinister layer to the case. While Adam continued to deny any involvement, the net around him was tightening. Detectives obtained a warrant to search Adam's property, hoping to find physical evidence that could link him directly to Evelyn's murder. The search revealed an unexpected discovery, a hidden notebook in Adam's garage. Inside were pages filled with financial calculations, notes about custody arrangements, and ominously, a sketch of a timeline detailing key events leading up to Evelyn's disappearance. While the contents of the notebook didn't explicitly implicate Adam, it added weight to the theory that he had meticulously planned his actions. For Evelyn's family, each new revelation brought a mix of relief and anguish. "We're getting closer to the truth," her sister said during an emotional interview, "but it's hard to hear, knowing how much she suffered." As investigators pieced together the fragments of Evelyn's life, one thing became increasingly clear. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated act by someone who saw Evelyn, and perhaps Alex, as obstacles to be removed. And yet, even as the evidence piled up, Alex's fate remained an unanswered question. His absence hung over the case like a shadow, a painful reminder of how much was still unknown. What had happened to him? And why hadn't his body been found? The answers to those questions would prove to be the key to unlocking the full story, a story that was growing darker with every passing day. The disappearance of Alex Hernandez, Evelyn's 5-year-old son, cast a long and agonizing shadow over the investigation. While Evelyn's death was now a grim certainty, Alex remained a question mark, an unbearable unknown that left investigators and family alike grasping for answers. Each lead about the boy's whereabouts seemed to dissolve into thin air, leaving only frustration and mounting fear. Detectives turned their focus toward the possibility that Alex had been a witness to his mother's murder. It was a chilling prospect, one that raised further questions about Adam Torres's involvement. Could Alex have seen something he shouldn't have? Was he silenced because he was a liability? The investigation intensified with a renewed focus on Alex. Officers scoured Evelyn's apartment and surrounding areas for any clue that might shed light on what had happened to him. During one search, a small but heart-wrenching discovery was made: a worn, brightly colored sneaker, one that Alex's grandmother immediately identified as his. It was found near a park close to the San Francisco Bay, far from where Evelyn's torso had been recovered. "This was his favorite pair," she said, holding the shoe as tears welled in her eyes. "He wouldn't have gone anywhere without them." The discovery sent ripples through the community, reigniting both hope and dread. Was Alex still alive, or had his fate been sealed alongside his mother's? The questions haunted Evelyn's family, who clung to the possibility, however slim, that Alex might still be out there. Witness accounts began to trickle in, adding layers of complexity to the case. One neighbor claimed to have heard a child crying late at night around the time Evelyn disappeared. "It was faint," she said, "but it sounded distressed. I thought maybe it was just kids playing outside." Another witness recalled seeing a man fitting Adam's description driving erratically near the bay shortly after midnight, his car loaded with what looked like heavy bags. But the most unsettling piece of testimony came from a young girl playing in the park on the evening of Evelyn's disappearance. She told her parents she saw a boy sitting in a car with a man who looked mad. The girl's description of the car matched the vehicle Adam drove, a fact that detectives were quick to act on. Confronted with these accounts, Adam's composure began to crack. During an intense interrogation, investigators presented him with the evidence, a timeline placing him near Evelyn's apartment, the recovered sneaker, and the witness statements. Adam's responses grew evasive, his calm exterior giving way to frustration. "I already told you everything I know," he snapped. "Why do you keep coming back to me?" But the walls were closing in. Forensic analysis of the sneaker revealed traces of sand and algae consistent with the Bay Area. Investigators theorized that Alex had been taken there, perhaps as a final resting place. Yet despite exhaustive searches with cadaver dogs and divers, no trace of the boy's body was ever found. For Evelyn's family, the absence of Alex was a wound that refused to heal. At a candlelight vigil held in his honor, Evelyn's mother addressed the crowd with a voice heavy with grief. "He's just a child," she said, holding a photo of Alex aloft. "He deserves to come home no matter what." The community's support only grew in the wake of these revelations. Donations poured in to fund further searches, and volunteers joined law enforcement in combing the area for any signs of Alex. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to waver. The silence surrounding Alex's fate became deafening, leaving a void that no amount of effort could fill. Behind closed doors, detectives wrestled with a grim possibility. Alex may have been the key to understanding Evelyn's murder, a silent witness whose presence posed a threat too great for Adam Torres to ignore. But without concrete evidence, this theory remained speculative, yet another haunting thread in a case defined by its unanswered questions. As the chapter ended, the image of Alex, smiling and full of life, remained etched in the hearts of all who followed the case. His absence was a painful reminder of the darkness that had consumed Evelyn's world, leaving a chilling question hanging in the air. What became of Alex Hernandez? As the investigation into Evelyn Hernandez's death deepened, the focus on Adam Torres grew sharper. He was no longer just a person of interest. He was the prime suspect. The mounting evidence against him, coupled with his evasive behavior, left detectives with little doubt. But to secure a conviction, they needed more than suspicion. They needed proof. Adam's calm facade had begun to crack during his last interrogation. Confronted with the discovery of Alex's sneaker, the witness statements placing him near Evelyn's apartment, and the forensic evidence tying him to the bay, his responses grew increasingly defensive. "You're wasting your time," he snapped at one point. "I didn't do anything." Detectives weren't convinced. Behind closed doors, they mapped out his movements in the weeks leading up to Evelyn's disappearance. Surveillance footage, phone records, and witness accounts began to form a timeline that contradicted Adam's alibi. The night Evelyn vanished, his car had been spotted near her apartment and later near the bay. A neighbor's testimony described loud voices coming from Evelyn's apartment that evening, one of them unmistakably male. To press Adam further, detectives secured a warrant to search his home. What they found in his garage was both disturbing and damning. A roll of duct tape matching fragments found at the bay, traces of sand and algae in his car, and most incriminating of all, receipts for industrial-strength cleaning supplies purchased just days after Evelyn's disappearance. "He's meticulous," Detective Mark Benson noted, "but even the most calculated plans leave traces, and Adam left plenty." Adam's co-workers began coming forward with troubling accounts of his behavior. One recalled a conversation where Adam mentioned feeling trapped by a problem he couldn't escape. Another described how Adam had been unusually tense in the days before Evelyn's disappearance, frequently stepping out of the office to take private phone calls. But it was Adam's wife who provided the most critical information. During a separate interview, she revealed that Adam had been unusually secretive about his whereabouts on the night Evelyn disappeared. "He said he was working late," she told detectives, "but when I asked for details, he got defensive. It wasn't like him." Her statement, combined with the physical evidence and timeline, painted a picture of a man desperately trying to cover his tracks. Detectives theorized that Adam had lured Evelyn to meet him under the pretense of resolving their conflicts. But when the conversation didn't go as planned, he resorted to violence. The question of Alex's fate hung heavily over the case. Detectives believed the boy had witnessed his mother's murder and was subsequently taken to the bay. But without his body, proving this theory remained a challenge. Desperate to unravel the truth, detectives conducted a reenactment of Adam's suspected movements on the night in question. Using his phone's GPS data, they traced his route from Evelyn's apartment to the bay and back to his home. The timeline matched perfectly with witness accounts and surveillance footage. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Adam's demeanor shifted once more. He stopped denying involvement outright and instead began shifting blame. "It wasn't my idea," he claimed during a follow-up interrogation. "I didn't want it to go this far." When pressed for clarification, Adam refused to elaborate. This cryptic statement raised new questions. Was Adam acting alone, or was someone else involved? Detectives began exploring the possibility of an accomplice, someone who might have helped Adam dispose of Evelyn's body and conceal Alex's whereabouts. But as they delved deeper, no clear leads emerged. For Evelyn's family, the slow march toward justice was agonizing. Every new detail brought fresh waves of grief. "He had a choice," Evelyn's sister said during a news interview. "He could have walked away, but instead, he destroyed everything." The community's anger boiled over as news of Adam's alleged actions spread. Protesters gathered outside his home, demanding answers and justice for Evelyn and Alex. The case had become a lightning rod for conversations about domestic violence, power imbalances, and the vulnerabilities of immigrant women. As the chapter ended, Adam Torres was left sitting in a holding cell, his carefully constructed life unraveling. The web of lies and deception he had woven around himself was tightening, and it was only a matter of time before it snapped completely. Evelyn Hernandez had always been a woman of quiet strength. Despite the challenges she faced as a single mother and an immigrant in San Francisco, she carried herself with grace and resilience. But in her final moments, that strength was met with an unimaginable betrayal. On the evening of May 1st, Evelyn left her apartment after putting Alex to bed. The day had been long, and she had postponed a conversation she dreaded, one with Adam Torres. He had insisted on meeting to settle things about the pregnancy. Her instinct told her not to go, but the promise of financial support for Alex and her unborn child was a lifeline she couldn't ignore. She told Alex, "Mommy will be back soon," and kissed his forehead. The memory of that moment would haunt Evelyn's family forever, as it was the last time anyone would see her alive. Phone records placed Adam at the meeting point, a secluded parking lot near the waterfront. Evelyn's car was found abandoned there days later, but in the quiet hours of that night, it became the scene of an irreparable tragedy. Witnesses later reported hearing raised voices and the unmistakable sound of a struggle. "She was scared," one witness recalled during the investigation. "I couldn't see much, but she kept backing away, and he was yelling. Then it went quiet." Detectives pieced together Evelyn's final moments from a combination of forensic evidence and chilling admissions from Adam during his interrogations. As Evelyn pleaded for him to take responsibility for their child, Adam grew agitated. His anger boiled over into violence, a desperate attempt to silence the woman who could unravel his carefully constructed life. The murder was not an act of passion, as Adam later claimed. It was premeditated. A roll of duct tape found in Adam's possession matched pieces recovered near the bay. Investigators discovered traces of Evelyn's blood in his car, along with fibers from her clothing. Adam had meticulously planned the crime, but like most plans rooted in desperation, it was imperfect. Detectives theorized that after killing Evelyn, Adam drove her body to the bay. He had wrapped her in plastic and duct tape, intending to weigh her down and ensure she would never be found. But the tide betrayed him. When the body resurfaced, it exposed his crime and shattered his illusions of control. What remained unclear, and what Adam refused to admit, was Alex's fate. Detectives believed the boy had been in the apartment that night, possibly asleep, and was taken by Adam afterward. Whether Alex had witnessed his mother's murder or had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, the outcome was the same. He, too, disappeared without a trace. As investigators reconstructed the events of that fateful night, Evelyn's family grappled with their grief. Her mother, clutching a photo of Evelyn and Alex, wept openly during a press conference. "She just wanted a better life for her children," she said through sobs. "How could someone do this to her? To Alex?" The public outcry grew louder with each revelation. News outlets called Evelyn's murder a calculated act of cruelty, and community leaders demanded justice not just for her but for Alex, whose absence had become the most haunting piece of the puzzle. Candlelight vigils turned into rallies with crowds chanting, "Justice for Evelyn," and "Where is Alex?" As Adam sat in his holding cell, silent and uncooperative, detectives pressed forward. They knew they were close to breaking him, but time was running out. Without Alex's body, they feared the case might remain incomplete, a devastating prospect for a family already broken by loss. But even as the darkness of Evelyn's final moments came to light, one question lingered above all. Could Alex's fate still be uncovered? Or was the truth destined to remain buried, like so many other secrets Adam had tried and failed to hide? The disappearance of Alex Hernandez was the single most agonizing piece of the case. While the evidence against Adam Torres and Evelyn's murder was overwhelming, the lack of closure surrounding Alex haunted both the investigators and the grieving family. Every new detail uncovered about that fateful night deepened the mystery of what had happened to the 5-year-old boy who was last seen innocently sleeping in his bed. As the case against Adam moved forward, detectives became increasingly convinced that Alex had been taken by Adam after Evelyn's murder. But why? Theories abounded. Some believed Alex had witnessed the crime and was silenced to protect Adam's secrets. Others speculated that Adam, panicked and unable to dispose of both bodies at once, had taken Alex elsewhere. Each possibility was more chilling than the last. "We have to find him," Detective Mark Benson said during a strategy meeting. "Even if we can't bring him home alive, we owe Evelyn's family the truth." Search efforts intensified. Cadaver dogs were brought back to the Bay Area, sniffing through every crevice along the shoreline. Divers plunged into the cold, murky waters, scouring the depths for any trace of the boy. Meanwhile, investigators expanded their search radius, combing through wooded areas and abandoned buildings. Flyers with Alex's bright, smiling face were plastered across the city, a painful reminder of the hope that was slipping away. During one search, officers discovered a child's toy car in a patch of overgrown grass near the bay. It was partially buried in the dirt, its vibrant paint chipped and worn. Evelyn's mother identified it immediately. "That was Alex's favorite toy," she said, clutching it to her chest. "He never went anywhere without it." The discovery reignited a sense of urgency. Forensic experts examined the toy for fingerprints or DNA, hoping it would provide a breakthrough. But the results were inconclusive, leaving detectives once again at a standstill. Desperate for answers, detectives turned their focus back to Adam. His cryptic statements during interrogations suggested he knew more than he was willing to admit. "I did what I had to do," he had said once, his voice barely above a whisper. "There was no other way." Pressed further, Adam refused to elaborate. Detectives pushed him harder, showing him photos of Alex and recounting the boy's last known moments. But Adam's expression remained stone-like, his silence a wall they couldn't break through. In a shocking twist, an inmate at the jail where Adam was being held approached authorities with a lead. The inmate claimed Adam had confided in him, saying the kid was too much of a risk, he couldn't be left behind. While the inmate's credibility was questionable, the statement sent shivers through the investigative team. Was this a confession? Or was it another attempt by Adam to manipulate the narrative? Evelyn's family was torn between hope and despair. At a public vigil held near the bay, her mother addressed the crowd, her voice trembling with emotion. "Alex is out there somewhere," she said, holding up a photo of him. "We won't stop searching until we find him." The public rallied behind the family, demanding justice not only for Evelyn but for Alex, whose absence had become a symbol of the case's most painful questions. Community members organized search parties, while local businesses raised money to support the ongoing investigation. But as weeks turned into months, the possibility of finding Alex alive grew more remote. Detectives faced the agonizing reality that without Alex's body, their case against Adam might never be fully complete. His absence was a gaping hole in the narrative, a piece of the puzzle that refused to fit. Yet one thing was clear. Alex's disappearance wasn't random. It was deliberate, calculated, just like Evelyn's murder. As the chapter ended, the shadow of Alex's fate loomed larger than ever. His face, once a symbol of innocence and joy, had become a haunting reminder of the case's darkest truths. And while the search for him continued, one question echoed louder than all the rest. How could a child so loved, so cherished, simply vanish? The courtroom was packed. The air felt heavy, thick with tension and anticipation, as Adam Torres, dressed in a sharp suit that contrasted starkly with the weight of the accusations against him, sat at the defense table. His expression was stoic, but there was an unmistakable flicker of unease in his eyes. For the family of Evelyn Hernandez, this was the moment they had been waiting for, the beginning of the trial that they hoped would finally bring justice. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," began the prosecutor, a seasoned attorney with a commanding presence. Her voice echoed through the room as she laid out the grim details of the case. "This is a story of betrayal, cruelty, and the deliberate silencing of a mother who dared to ask for accountability." The prosecution wasted no time painting a vivid picture of Adam's calculated actions. They presented surveillance footage showing his car near Evelyn's apartment on the night of her disappearance. They showed receipts for the cleaning supplies, duct tape, and the chilling evidence of Evelyn's blood found in his vehicle. The jury visibly recoiled as photographs of the duct tape fragments from the bay and Evelyn's dismembered remains were displayed on the courtroom screen. Evelyn's sister, seated with her family in the front row, clenched her fists as the prosecutor detailed the timeline of events. He killed her to protect his secret. He silenced her because she refused to be erased. When it was the defense's turn, Adam's lawyer sought to shift the narrative. "There is no direct evidence," he argued, pacing in front of the jury. "No witness who can place Adam at the scene of the crime. This case is built on circumstantial evidence, on assumptions, not facts." The strategy was clear. Cast doubt wherever possible. The defense tried to undermine the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses, pointing out inconsistencies in their statements. They questioned the validity of the forensic evidence, suggesting that contamination could not be ruled out. But the courtroom was stunned when the defense introduced an alternate theory, that Evelyn's disappearance might have been voluntary. "What if Evelyn chose to disappear?" Adam's lawyer suggested, his voice dripping with feigned sympathy. "What if she felt overwhelmed and decided to start over somewhere else?" The suggestion was met with audible gasps from the gallery. Evelyn's mother shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her face. "She would never leave Alex," she whispered. Her words echoed the sentiment shared by everyone who knew Evelyn. This theory was as implausible as it was offensive. The most emotional moment of the trial came when Evelyn's mother took the stand. Her voice trembled as she described her daughter's devotion to her children. "She loved Alex more than anything in this world," she said, holding up a framed photograph of Evelyn and her son. "She worked so hard for him, she would never leave him. Never." The prosecution followed this testimony with a gut-wrenching letter written by Evelyn weeks before her death. Found in her apartment, it read, "If something happens to me, please take care of Alex and Fernando. They are my whole world." Adam's demeanor shifted as the trial progressed. Gone was the confident man who had denied involvement with a calm defiance. Now he sat with his shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact with the jury as the weight of the evidence against him became undeniable. When the prosecution rested its case, the defense scrambled to salvage Adam's image. But it was clear the jury was not buying it. Adam's cold, calculated behavior and the damning evidence against him had painted an unshakable picture of guilt. As closing arguments were delivered, the courtroom was silent except for the voices of the attorneys. The prosecutor's final words left a profound impact. Evelyn and Alex were not statistics. They were a mother and her son, taken from this world far too soon. Justice demands accountability. The jury was sent to deliberate, leaving Evelyn's family to endure the agonizing wait. For them, this trial wasn't just about punishing Adam. It was about honoring Evelyn's memory and finding closure, no matter how painful the truth might be. The jury filed back into the courtroom, their faces solemn as they avoided eye contact with anyone in the gallery. Evelyn Hernandez's family sat in rigid silence, hands clasped tightly together, bracing themselves for what was to come. On the other side of the room, Adam Torres sat stone-faced, his lawyer whispering something in his ear that he barely acknowledged. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked, his voice calm yet heavy with the gravity of the moment. The foreperson rose, clutching a piece of paper that seemed to hold the weight of the world. "We have, Your Honor." The silence in the room was deafening as the verdict was read. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Adam Torres, guilty of the first-degree murder of Evelyn Hernandez." A collective gasp filled the air. Evelyn's mother broke down, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her face. Her daughter's memory had finally received the justice it deserved, yet the pain of her loss still lingered. Adam's expression didn't waver, but his clenched fist betrayed the storm raging inside him. The judge's next words sealed his fate. "Mr. Torres, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The finality of those words brought a sense of closure, but it was bittersweet. Evelyn's family had sought this moment for so long, yet their hearts remained heavy. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring Evelyn or Alex back. The unanswered questions about Alex's fate cast a long shadow over the proceedings, a reminder that the story was far from over. Outside the courtroom, reporters jostled for interviews as the family exited, their grief and relief on full display. Evelyn's sister addressed the cameras, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This verdict is for Evelyn, for her strength, her love for her children, and the life she was building. But we cannot rest until Alex is found. We need to bring him home." The public reaction to the verdict was immediate and overwhelming. News outlets ran headlines like "Justice for Evelyn Hernandez" and "A Mother's Killer Convicted." Community members organized vigils and fundraisers to support ongoing efforts to locate Alex, who had become a symbol of innocence lost in the tragedy. But amid the relief, there was a haunting detail that lingered in the minds of everyone following the case. During his final statement to the court, Adam had made a cryptic remark that sent chills through the room. "You think you know everything," he said, his voice devoid of remorse. "But there are things you'll never understand." What did he mean? Was it a taunt, a final act of cruelty toward Evelyn's grieving family? Or was there more to the story, something even darker that had yet to be uncovered? The ambiguity of his words left detectives and the public alike grappling with a nagging sense of unease. As Adam was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Evelyn's family huddled together, finding strength in each other amidst their heartbreak. They had fought tirelessly for this moment, and while it didn't erase the pain, it was a step toward healing. The trial had ended, but the search for Alex continued. Flyers bearing his face remained plastered across San Francisco, a testament to the hope that still burned within his family and the community. "We'll never stop looking for you," Evelyn's mother whispered, clutching a candle at a vigil held later that night. "Wherever you are, we will find you." And as the chapter closed, one truth remained undeniable. Justice had been delivered for Evelyn, but Alex's story was far from finished. His absence was a question mark that refused to fade, a mystery that demanded answers no matter how long it took to uncover them. In the weeks following Adam Torres's conviction, the city of San Francisco began to settle back into its rhythm, but for Evelyn Hernandez's family, the pain remained as raw as ever. The courtroom victory had provided a sense of justice, but it did little to fill the void left by Evelyn's absence, or the gaping question of Alex's fate. Evelyn's mother, who had spent countless nights clutching her daughter's photo, now turned her focus to Alex. She spoke to news outlets and community leaders, urging them not to let the search for her grandson fade into obscurity. "We found Evelyn," she said during a televised interview, "but Alex is still out there. He deserves to come home too." Inspired by Evelyn's story, local advocacy groups rallied to create a foundation in her name. The Evelyn Hernandez Memorial Fund aimed to support families impacted by violence, particularly immigrant women navigating difficult relationships. Evelyn's story isn't just about tragedy, one organizer said at the fund's launch. It's about resilience, love, and the fight for justice. The foundation quickly gained traction, becoming a symbol of hope for families in similar situations. Evelyn's sister played a central role, sharing her family's journey at community events and using her platform to advocate for stronger protections for women and children. "We didn't choose this fight," she said during a candlelight vigil, "but we will see it through for Evelyn, for Alex, and for every family like ours." As the fund grew, so did public interest in Alex's disappearance. His image remained a constant presence in the city, appearing on billboards, flyers, and the evening news. Community members continued to organize search efforts, combing through parks, forests, and abandoned properties in the hopes of finding even the smallest clue. Despite the passage of time, the mystery surrounding Alex only deepened. Adam's cryptic remark during his sentencing, "You think you know everything, but there are things you'll never understand," haunted detectives and family members alike. What was he hiding? Did he know where Alex was? And if so, why wouldn't he say? For Evelyn's family, the unanswered questions were a source of relentless anguish, but they refused to let despair take hold. Instead, they channeled their grief into action, determined to honor Evelyn's legacy by helping others avoid the same fate. The foundation began offering workshops on recognizing warning signs in relationships, connecting women with legal resources, and advocating for policy changes to protect vulnerable families. As the year drew to a close, the family held a memorial service for Evelyn, marking the anniversary of her disappearance. Friends, neighbors, and strangers gathered to light candles in her honor, their faces illuminated by the soft glow. Evelyn's mother stood at the front, her voice trembling as she addressed the crowd. "Evelyn was a light in our lives," she said, her tears catching the flicker of the candle in her hand. "And Alex, he was her world. We will never stop fighting for them." The crowd responded with a wave of applause, their collective grief transforming into a powerful call to action. The event raised thousands of dollars for the foundation, ensuring its continued efforts to support families in crisis. While the search for Alex carried on, Evelyn's story became a rallying cry, a reminder of the importance of community, accountability, and the pursuit of justice. Her name was now synonymous with strength and advocacy, a testament to the power of love even in the face of unimaginable loss. But for her family, the pain of her absence remained a constant. As Evelyn's mother extinguished her candle at the end of the memorial, she whispered into the night, "We'll find you, Alex. Wherever you are, we'll bring you home." The candlelight vigils had faded, and the city's streets no longer bore the same intensity of search flyers and news cameras. But the question of Alex Hernandez's fate remained, a haunting void that refused to be filled. For Evelyn's family, every sunrise brought a flicker of hope, and every sunset renewed their grief. The justice served for Evelyn was incomplete. The silence surrounding Alex was deafening. Detectives had exhausted every lead, but the boy's absence was like a shadow looming over the entire investigation. Despite Adam Torres's conviction for Evelyn's murder, his cryptic remarks and refusal to cooperate on Alex's whereabouts left law enforcement and the family with more questions than answers. "Why won't he just tell us?" Evelyn's sister cried during an interview. Her voice was thick with desperation. "What does he gain by keeping this from us? Alex is just a little boy. He deserves to come home." The family's anguish resonated with the community, who continued to rally in support. The Evelyn Hernandez Memorial Fund expanded its reach, funding specialized search teams and keeping Alex's name alive in the media. "We can't let his story be forgotten," Evelyn's mother told a crowd gathered for another vigil. "He's out there somewhere. We need to bring him back." Yet time continued its relentless march forward, and with it came the grim reality that Alex might never be found. Forensic experts speculated that if Alex's body had been taken to the bay, the passage of time and the tides could have rendered the search nearly impossible. Still, the family refused to give up. "Until we know for certain," Evelyn's sister declared, "we will keep looking." One chilling possibility investigators couldn't ignore was that Adam hadn't acted alone. Was there someone else involved, an accomplice who had helped him dispose of Alex? The theory gained traction when a tip from a former associate of Adam suggested he had called in a favor during the days following Evelyn's disappearance. But despite intense scrutiny, no solid evidence of another suspect emerged. Adam's refusal to confess only added to the torment. In his last statement before being transferred to a maximum security prison, he repeated his haunting refrain: "You think you know everything, but you don't." The words lingered like an ominous echo, casting doubt over the investigation's completeness and leaving the family in agonizing uncertainty. For Evelyn's mother, each day without Alex was a day suspended in pain. She found solace in small rituals, lighting a candle for him every evening, holding onto his favorite toy car and speaking to him as though he were still listening. "Alex, if you can hear me, we're waiting for you," she whispered one night, her voice breaking. "We'll never stop waiting." In the community, Alex became a symbol, a reminder of the fragility of innocence and the devastating ripple effects of violence. His story inspired legislation aimed at protecting children and supporting families of missing persons. Lawmakers named the bill Alex's Law, ensuring that Evelyn and Alex's legacies would leave a lasting mark on the fight for justice. But for the family, these victories felt hollow without closure. Evelyn's mother, standing at her daughter's gravesite one cold morning, placed a bouquet of lilies at the base of the headstone. "I hope you're together," she murmured, her breath visible in the crisp air. "But I'll never stop looking, Evelyn. Never." As the years passed, the story of Evelyn and Alex Hernandez became part of San Francisco's collective memory. Documentaries, articles, and podcasts retold the tragic events, keeping their names in the public consciousness. Yet the unanswered question, what had happened to Alex, remained the case's most haunting detail. As the chapter closed, Evelyn's family gathered for a quiet dinner, their voices subdued but their bond unbroken. Alex's chair, as always, was left empty, a silent testament to their unyielding hope. And as the candle on the table flickered, Evelyn's mother looked toward the window, her voice soft but resolute. "We'll find you, Alex. I promise." What do you think of Adam Torres and the tragic story of Evelyn Hernandez? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories and updates. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.